This is the new product from FlightSimBuilder called Steam Gauges. Basically, it's a pack of gauges and dials that work with Microsoft Flight Simulator and X-Plane on PC. But unfortunately for Mac users, it's not compatible with, but there is a workaround and we'll get to that later. In this video, we're going to unpack it, go through the pricing, the features, the build quality, application, value, and the good and the bad points, which will help you figure out if they're worth it for you. FlightSimBuilder did send me the Steam Gauges panel for the purposes of this review, and like any other video, anything said here comes from me and nobody else. So first we're going to talk about the price. This comes in at around $488 US. Now this may seem a little high, just in the fact that there are other options available here, namely Air Manager. However, there's nothing like for like, and we have to take into consideration the extra features that you're getting, as well as the plug and play factor and the build quality. So try and save your judgment of the price until the end of the video. So what can this little gem do? This works with Windows only for the time being. To use it on a Mac, you will need to match it up with Air Manager. As you can see here, we have 9 gauges available in the standard config: airspeed, altitude, attitude, turn coordinator, heading, vertical speed, 2 nav gauges, and RPM. All the basics you'd expect and probably more. Now what you're looking at is just the default setup here. There are possibilities to use Air Manager, like I said before, and this will open up more customization. Also, FlightSimBuilder, as far as I'm aware, are going to be releasing more configurations. It might have happened already by the time you see this video. It uses the FlightSimBuilder software to launch, and in my experience, this software is extremely stable. In fact, I can't think of a single time it's ever crashed or not worked over the past, say, a year. There is a new version with a boost mode which promises less lag. Look, this unit, it's not lag-free, but it's certainly much nippier than the older software. Now, I will touch on that in a second. The display is 60 Hz, and the dials you can see here are very smooth. Although there is a little bit of latency on the dials, like on the actual inputs, it's extremely minor and not enough for it to be any kind of issue. Like I said a few moments ago, it's a massive improvement over the original software without the boost mode. It also has a 1024 by 786 screen, which is the same as the original G1000 unit. Now, one thing to point out that the original G1000 is more or less a one-to-one replica, and the Steam Gauges, they're not. They look about 20% smaller than your standard 6-pack, than your standard dial. Let's take an RPM dial, for instance, in a Cessna 172. Each of these gauges measuring in at 55 millimeters in diameter. Now, this is a guesstimate. If there's anyone out there, any real pilots, anyone with access to, say, a Cessna 172 or a 152, if you can supply a measurement, a diameter measurement, and just dump it in the comments, I'd be really keen to find out exactly how large those dials are. The resolution and physical size of the actual gauge does feed into the question, is the display too low in resolution? Now, I kind of say yes and no. You do have to look quite closely at them just because of their physical size, and some people will start to notice the pixels. Does it detract from anything? No, it doesn't. There's also the argument that keeping the screen at this, what some people might call a reasonably low resolution, gives your PC an easier time running the sim. And I don't know about you, but I'll take FPS over clarity every day of the week. But it is important to highlight that some of the smaller details on the dials diffuse just a little bit under the resolution of the screen. Overall, though, the screen resolution is just fine. It's fine for the price point, and I'm going to just say good enough. The gauges that need it all have their dials attached with a clickable function, and to turn the panel on and off, all you have to do is click and hold the top right key. It's pretty simple. Now for the design and the build quality. This has a very nice soft matte plastic finish to this front panel. But you got to be careful because I do think it's something that may pick up a little bit of grease off your hands or your fingers. So just watch out for that. Like I said, nice, clean, soft, matte, high quality plastic finish to the front, and it's got like a hard plastic finish to the rear. Very similar to the original G1000 unit. You got your standard HDMI, your USB port down here, and your power on the back. Now, this panel does differ on the way it mounts compared to the original G1000, as we've now got these threaded inserts in the back, which we use these screws on the tabs to mount it. This keeps the front plate nice and clean, so there's no longer any screw holes on the front. Now, moving on to the buttons, I do think these are 3D printed. Now, I say I think because if they are, these are hands down the best 3D printed parts of this size I've ever seen. I mean, if you told me they were injection molded, I'd probably believe you. They also have a quality feel and rotation with a nice audible sound and click. The stand itself is metal, though, like I've said before, there is a little bit of movement, you know, when you're using those top click functions, but it's nothing really to be worried about at all. Overall, the design and build quality, I think, is good for the price, even punching slightly above its weight. It's clean, well finished and thought out. The fact that it's compatible with the existing G1000 frame is great too. As you can see, I've just chucked it straight into my GA setup. I've been able to have the MFD on the right just stay where it is, and chuck this straight into the original mounting hole that I created on that frame. Flying with this, well, it was great fun. I've always been a G1000 flyer, and moving to the Steam Gauges, well, it really gets your, it gets your brain working in a different way. The challenge of using them was really quite rewarding, and that's something I wasn't expecting. The gauges themselves performed just as I would expect from something at this price point, and that's a common theme throughout. Flying point to point using the VORs felt really satisfying. The viewing angles on these are also a bit of a highlight, meaning that if you do have the monitor height correctly positioned, colours don't really wash out too much at all. And that's more important than you might think, and not a lot of people talk about it. Now for the good and the not so good, and we'll start off with the good. So first up, it's got to be ease of use. Anyone can set these up, it's super simple. The second thing is the build quality is just where it needs to be considering the price, maybe even punching above its weight just a little bit. The rotational dials feel high quality. The screen has good viewing angles. The new FlightSimBuilder software update with the turbo mode makes the knobs quite a bit more responsive. And finally, FlightSimBuilder customer service on a whole just seems to be top notch. Go and check out the reviews on the website. Now, after saying all that, nothing is ever perfect. However, I can't really find much here at all. You could say it's not Mac compatible yet, only relevant to X-Plane users though. However, you could probably rig something up with Air Manager, so not a huge issue in a sense. It is a smidgen on the pricey side, but the build quality, the ease of use and everything that we mentioned before does kind of match up to that. FlightSimBuilder are kind of like the budget kings for avionics. If you look at any of the avionics or any of the competitors' avionics, you could be talking 2 or 3 times the price. So in that sense, great value. Now, final thoughts. Look, the FlightSimBuilder Steam Gauges, I think, are a great addition to anyone that's trying to build a more, let's say, a hands-on immersive sim. This is a very niche product that I reckon will only speak to a portion of the flight sim community. For those that do have the money to spend on these and are looking for that hands-on feel experience, you won't be disappointed. And that's where something like this really shines. It's that physical, hands-on interaction and tactile feel. And that's exactly what you get here. There's something about clicking and turning, looking at physical dials that just can't be replicated any other way. not even in VR, and that's an argument for another video. FlightSimBuilder has integrated this with their software in a way that's mostly plug and play. Couple that with the reliability, ease of use of the products overall, the customer service, attention to detail, the build quality. The Steam Gauges panel is a great addition to FlightSimBuilder's lineup of products, and it would be particularly well suited to anyone who already owns their GNS 530.